school environment. We know that the individual is not a victim of heredity nor a helpless pawn of his environment, but it is necessary to know that learning means here learning of self-confidence, learning of cooperative spirit, learning persistence, seeing that they are not alienated or feel inferior to others in the system. And therefore, the guidance and counseling services that are provided in the school try to enhance these qualities in the children and try to reduce any negative influences the environment may pose on them. And this will actually try to help the students. Now, regarding the counseling, what is the meaning of the counseling? We know that counseling is a professional relationship between a trained counselor and also a client. We have got the client, here the student, who is in a face-to-face relationship with the counselor, and this is a process of enlightenment where people help others. Here in this case, it is the counselor who helps the client to come over certain problems and also to see that their growth is encouraged. Now, the counseling is a process designed wherein we have the client's understanding and their doubts getting clarified by of their own personal views by the counselors. Now, every person has some self-determined goals, but usually these goals, they feel threatened because they have certain problems which they face while trying to attain these goals, and they have no idea of how to solve these problems. So in order to reduce these hurdles which come in the way of their attainment of goals, it is necessary that these clients, in this case the students, get certain guidance from the counselors so that they'll be able to pass over all these difficulties and try to adjust their own problems, which may be sometimes emotional, sometimes environmental, and sometimes cognitive or behavioral related, and try to attain the best and try to attain whatever goals they are seeking in their lives. Now, here we know that everybody has to make some choices in life, and these choices depend on one, their resources, as well as their attitudes, and also the helpful sort of communication they may receive from their elders. So resolution of problems will help in the attainment of goals. And if the attainment of goals has to be meaningful, then these emotional problems or interpersonal problems have to be solved. It is here that the counselor tries to help the individuals with more potential to growth and self-development and self-actualization. These processes are developed by the counselors in the clients here, the students. Now, the guidance is a different form of thing because we know that guidance is providing a particular direction to the students. Here, Scharzer and Stone have defined guidance as a means to direct and to pilot or guide. Guidance is a more of a directive or a prescriptive form of assistance. To prescribe means to actually say what is a clear way of getting certain things done. Now, we know that general educational community systems, they try to help what we call guidance to all the children, and such services include providing information services or testing services or placement services or follow-up services. Like these services are provided. But we know the guidance is a cognitive educational services that are provided within and outside the school system, and these career guidances or other guidances which actually help the persons to understand themselves and understand how they are and what sort of help they can receive from outside, and they also get the valid information about their own potential as well as what is available outside the school and in his own environment. Similarly, guidance is concerned with development through adjustment, and therefore we know that the guidance tries to address the individual needs of the students and trying to develop more capacity for effective choice making by actually trying to give more information about all their surroundings and environments. Now, these guidance choices helps the individual to make more what we call informed choices about their lives, and they can also develop a particular sort of idea about what profession they would like to enter and also what sort of life they would like to lead. So this is basically the guidance helps them to choose a particular sort of lifestyle. Now, the differences between guidance and counseling are many, but generally, when we go for counseling, we know that we have the counselor as well as the client, and the counseling and psychotherapy are related, but generally, when we talk about the counseling, we are talking about the advice. Now, the client has some understanding about his own self and the resources available with him and what decision he has to take. He also has an inkling sometimes, and sometimes they do not have what risks they have to take, and also how all this will contribute to their own personal growth. So we know that parents, teachers, doctors, nurses, social workers, all these people give counseling. But psychological counseling means understanding what are the psychological components of a student and trying to determine their growth by giving an appropriate advice to these people. Now, this counseling can be sometimes help in the growth of the children. Therefore, the counseling is called as a developmental counseling. Sometimes the children may have certain crises in their lives, and when the counselor tries to support them in making informed decisions, then that is known as a crisis support. Sometimes we have to just understand and provide advice to them on how to deal with certain problems, and this is known as psychotherapeutic counseling. Sometimes they have certain problems and guidance has to be given with regard to how to solve the problems. This becomes counseling with regard to the problems. Now, in the counseling, we have the client, and we ask the client to explore what are his choices, what are the resources available, what is the problem, and how to get over it. Now, in this process, the children will discover and clarify about the ways, and they will come to resolve the problem with more understanding and more resourcefulness. Now, counseling denotes a professional relationship between the counselor and the client. This is usually person to person, but mostly it is between two persons, but sometimes we see counseling given to small groups. Now here, the students understanding about their own life space, how they are placed, what is the problem, how they have to achieve these problems, achieve their own goals by trying to solve the problems and having this attainment of the self-determined goals, and how to make informed choices which are meaningful, and to how to actually resolve the problems of their own, which may be sometimes cognitive, as we said earlier, or it may be emotional problem, or sometimes an internal personal problem. How to solve these problems is actually given by the counselor. Now, the Counseling Service Association talks about the counseling as a way to reveal the possibility of identifying the lifestyle of the person according to their own behavior. Now, counseling is a process where the counselor assists the clients to seek a solution to a problem by helping him to identify what are the major resources of the one can get. All these of the client, if they sit together, when they talk to each other, and they usually the counselor helps the client to seek a solution to the problem by going through all these issues along with the client. Now, we know that the counselee has to actually make the choices on his own, but then the facts relating to the choice, plan, adjustments he has to make, but after only mutual deliberation with the counselor, he is able to see the light, and therefore the continuous process of consultation of the becomes the counseling. Now, we have the counselee or the client sometimes confused about the state of their affairs, but after consultation with the counselor, he becomes clear and the confused state of mind disappears. What is the nature of the counseling? Generally, as we were telling earlier, we have the counselor, counselee, and also an experience which has been bad to the counselee, that is, he has undergone a negative experience. Now he has to overcome it, and he actually approaches the counselor with the idea of solving this negative experience. And this problem is usually solved by this sort of deliberation, and they find client gets released from this problem. The counselor therefore must listen very carefully to the counselor spelling out their needs. They also should identify and help them achieve the goals, and also see what are the difficulties in achievement of the goals and what are the problems that the counselor is experiencing. Now here, the counselor has to see that the environment is open and the client is able to what we call spell out all his problems openly and in an open environment, and also that the counselor should feel that the counselor has a genuine caring for him, and this will facilitate the process of counseling, and therefore the problems are seen by the counselee and the resources are seen, and now he knows how to address the problem. Now, what is school counseling? We know that in the general any education institution, counseling means here the student is given information about the courses or the schedules are given out about the classes, and these are the general counseling. But when it comes to the academic counseling, these are the issues. But when general counseling, psychological counseling would mean the students would face certain problems during studying a course or a program, and therefore the students have to be provided with guidance, support, and follow-up. And also, if they face any issues or academic stressors, the students must be provided guidance and also the emotional or other support, which will help the students grow academically. Now, we were talking about the small group counseling as well as the individual counseling. But also there are certain issues with regard to the understanding of lessons which are addressed in counseling. And also there are certain students who face certain problems either in their personal or in academic life, and these problems have to be addressed, and the counselors help the students in crisis to overcome these problems by proper counseling. Also, we have students having certain emotional issues, and they have anxiety with regarding to their performance, and also they have anxiety with relation to their exams and how they perform in their exams. And also sometimes the administrators or the teachers may not be sympathetic to these people, and we have certain problems of trying to understand sometimes there may be revulsion from the peers, or they may not be accepted from the peers, or they may be criticized. And in all these aspects, the counselors should see that the students do not have any difficulty while writing their exams, or they do not have any performance anxiety, nor they have any problem with the being ridiculed by their peers, or the school attire. Sometimes we can suggest them to have appropriate school attire, and also we should help them, the students, with regard to their cognitive achievement and aptitude and achievement tests. These tests can be given and they can be counseled properly about what issues they are having with regarding to their cognitive or with their knowledge or understanding of the subject matter. Now, the counseling may be concerned with also the developmental issues, especially during the lifespan development. We know that during the growth phases and developmental stages, the students may face certain issues with regarding to the socialization process, or with regard to the behavioral processes, or how they develop relationships with each other, relations with each other. Now here, to understand and resolve these problems, and to make decisions, and to cope up with the stress or crisis, and to develop insights into their own personal development and their ability to grow, and they have to be guided from time to time, and also counseled with regard to the choices they can make, and also their feelings of their inner conflict, or anything they have a problem with regard to resolving certain crisis. Now these things can be done by the counselor by seeing that the client's values and are respected. We know that the client's personal resources or values or capacity for self-determination, all these also have to be taken into consideration by the counselor, because it is not that we can impinge on the client as to make the difference. Here, the client's willingness to change is also important, and his willingness for self-determination and what resources a client is able to use, all All these have a major impact when he tries to develop. Now, counseling is all about influencing the other person and changing behavior, but ultimately it becomes a voluntary behavior of the client, and therefore there are limits imposed on the counselor, and these limits have to be considered while counseling. It is not that the counselor himself will undertake the work to be done by the client, but here he only provides the resources and to actually identify the resources, identify one's own strengths, and also identify the ways of overcoming a particular problem that the students or the clients may face in their developmental stages. Now, the goals of counseling are here: the person who comes for counseling, his best interest should be chosen. And also, we should see if counseling has certain sort of emotional distress that has to be reduced by helping them to logically and rationally understanding the process of what is causing this emotional distress. Sometimes we do not have an idea of what sort of persons we are, and therefore here the counselor can help the client develop his knowledge about his own self, and also how he can develop with his relationships with others. Now, we know that there are long-term goals for any person, and these long-term goals can be realized by the client with the help of the counselor. But sometimes the achievement of the long-term goals would mean that the short-term goals should be addressed. So if only the short-term goals are addressed, it is possible that the personal meaning and values will be coming into acceptance, and the student will know what to do exactly, and removing the symptoms or difficulties, one can achieve the long-term goals. So the immediate goals, if they are satisfied, they can help in the realization of the long-term goals. So the counselor should be aware of the long-term goals of the students, as well as their short-term goals, as well as what is actually impinging or coming in the way of their development, and try to help them identify their strategies, means, and resources of overcoming a problem, and then also find out what are the positive influences one can make use of, and then try to chart out a course. Now, the individual may feel he's going to burst sometimes, he's not able to get things out of his chest. Now, that is, he has to communicate with someone so that his feelings are becoming more obvious, and his thoughts are communicated to someone. So, when he has no chance of communicating with a counselor or with anyone, there is a problem, there will be pent-up feelings, and all this will result in frustration and anger. So, the counseling has to be helped in this regard with what is best for him, and the distress should be identified, and the counselor should be helped to express his feelings, and when the feelings are expressed, then it would be easier to address the problem. Now, also, the increased self-knowledge and increased awareness about one's own self is also important. Sometimes it is possible that the students or clients may actually have several dreams, and they may be due to the repressed feelings as per certain psychologists, and therefore the individual's dreams, his thoughts, and his feelings are all related to the counselor, based on which the counselor suggests ways to overcome the feelings and help the person to understand what are his inner feelings, as well as more knowledge about the self. And one of the most important other thing is people should try to develop interpersonal relations. Now, this is a bit difficult nowadays because we know that when the individual faces problems, when there are impaired relations with others. Every human being is a social being, and therefore he tries for social relations with others. But sometimes these are impaired due to the person's inability or due to the other person's inability. But how to actually deal with such past or current relations which may be causing problems for the individual becomes very important, because we know that the counselors, parents, siblings, and other loved ones, they may have they may be causing some problems to the counselor or vice versa. And therefore, it's important that these issues are also put into the counseling process. And we know that there are therapists try to understand the counselee about his relationship, about his relations, and they also watch such relations directly and observe, and they are able to interpret the person's feelings more accurately, and they may also counsel the student or client about how to better their personal relations. We also know that every counselor has certain philosophy about what sort of values one should develop in a client. And these values will try to influence on how they give the counseling, and also the methods of counseling also vary. Now, these counselors actually help the clients choose their goals and reach their goals efficiently, but they generally doesn't mean that they accept all the goals of the client, because the goals of the client are not exactly what may be supposed. For example, the goal of the client may be something which may be ridiculous or which may not be obtaining, not worthy. But at the same time, here, the counselor, he is able to see, and he understands and provides proper goals as well, but also sees that he is able to change the behavior of the person by helping the client understand the situation in which he is faced, and ask him to voluntarily change by giving him the understanding about the depth of the whole issue, and ask him to become voluntarily to change, so he becomes more responsible for his own behavior, more independent in his own behavior, and is in more control of his or her behavior. Now, with what we call contrast with this is the job of mentoring. Counseling is different from mentoring. In mentoring, we have got what we call a professional relationship, or a professional sort of learning being developed in the students by a mentor. Now, this mentor is a person who is better acquainted with knowledge, and due to his position in society, or due to his having been better placed in society, and also having more knowledge about the issue, now he is able to offer professional sort of help, and gives help with regard to the professional development of the student. Now, the person who gets such sort of professional development is known as a mentee. Now, here mentees are looked after by the mentor, who are more experienced, more knowledgeable, and also more trusted. Now, these mentors are advisors generally who help to develop the personal skills or competencies in the students. Mentoring is, as I was saying, developing motivation as well as professional competence. Now, mentors are in a what we call a personal relationship with the mentee, and they have a dyadic sort of relationship. That is, two persons are involved generally, and it is unidirectional in the sense that mentoring is provided from mentor to mentee. But sometimes it is also happens that the mentee is also very free and collaborative, and he is also creative, and he is able to open up to the mentor and explain all the things. Generally, the mentor is having an understanding of the family background of the mentee, the educational background, their creative aspects, as well as their knowledge, the intelligence levels, and therefore they voluntarily try to help these mentees to develop professionally by grooming them, and by actually telling them what sort of things or what sort of resources are available out there, and help them to have professional guidance by taking into consideration all the what we call the resources of the person, the skills, as well as their financial abilities, and also the other competences. When they take all these aspects, and then the mentor tries to give what we call professional guidance to client, here we call them as mentee. This is with regard to special goals and purposes that this happens. Now, we know that sometimes the mentor-mentee may have a collaborative sort of relationship, which can have a significant effect on the mentee. Now, this sort of trying to give professional guidance to mentees is generally seen in the engineering colleges or colleges where professional competencies have to be developed, and where there is no much scope for developing them from the institution side, and where having the creativity and more abilities, more intelligence, such students are provided from industries or more knowledgeable persons, or on the artistic side or on the trade or business side, where the mentor provides all the professional sort of guidance, help, resources, sometimes economically too, and this is known as mentoring. Now, mentoring, when we compare to training, now training focuses on work-related skills or processes, whereas here, the professional and the personal growth of the mentee is taken into consideration. And training is a group activity generally, where the trainer actually tries to train a small group or a large group, but where all the participants learn the same thing. But here the mentor is taking a specialized interest in the mentee and giving him focus and helping to learn something which is related to the job or work related skill. And also, but in this process, they go a bit beyond and helps him at an individual level. Now we talk about the role modeling, but in role modeling, there is no direct relationship, and modeling is done based on a role. But here, role modeling means observing a particular model and trying to develop the same sort of characteristics in a person. But here, in the mentor-mentee relationship, the characteristics are also developed in the mentee because of the personal interest of the mentor. Now, if the mentoring, which has become a concept in the professional institutions, is to be realized, we know that here the mentee and the mentor has to agree to go for such sort of a binding, and therefore this is an intentional sort of a relationship. And also the parties approach each other here, and they have respect for each other, and they give and take feedback from each other on the sort of mentorship one is providing as well as one is receiving. And also the parties here communicate very openly and freely about the sort of knowledge they are getting or giving, and they are open and they are critiquing each other, and the work what they are getting and the work habits are developed properly. And this is generally also based on a sort of trust, what we call based on trust. But at the same time, here we know that there is, because the mentor knows the mentee personally, there is also a sort of confidentiality. And here open, honest communication, mutual trust, and also confidentiality is very much required. This is because sometimes the mentee's personal information is available with the mentor, and here one has to see that this information doesn't go out. And the trust and commitment to guaranteeing confidentiality becomes important here. And this is very important, because otherwise, if such a guarantee is not given, the persons may not be able to open themselves in front of the mentor. Now, we know guidance is another aspect which is provided by the schools. And we know that the school is the first socialization agency which tries to develop the social skills in an individual. We know that the school word has come because we have got the Christian church trying to develop a thought process in their religious followers, and that has become a school of thought. From the school, the idea of school is who follows a particular way of philosophy. And also you have got the Buddhist school, Buddhist temples. Here, the word school means we have a institutional arrangement where learning is given and managed, and such a learning has to be socially approved because there are several different types of knowledge. So when we try to give knowledge through an institution, and that knowledge is socially approved, and when we have a particular framework of pedagogy, and we have a curriculum, and when we have professional teachers who try to actually give this curriculum or pedagogy to the children, and we have a compulsory attendance from pupils and school groupings, and such a setting comes to the school. Now, in classroom situations, we have got two people actually, two sorts of people. One are the students and the other are the teachers. Now, the school is such a place where there are a number of activities and interpersonal relations happening. And we know that the school has to be a safe, suitable, and it should be a balanced sort of climate should be given. And the education has to be given in such a background, in such a way that the complex relationships between people do not affect the transmission of knowledge. Now, this emergence of complex social relationships between teachers and students and teachers and the management in the teachers and the management in the children, and the number of changes that are happening in the societal level has also influenced the schools, and therefore the speed with which they are changing has also brought out a change among the social relationships in the schools. And the school system or the school setting also has gradually changed in the last 20 to 30 years. And we know that the students' productivity or gaining knowledge or having a healthy personality or trying to develop interrelationships with others have gradually become very much changed. And therefore, a happy person or a person who is becoming more knowledgeable out of his own volition and trying to gain knowledge and social integration processes also have weakened. Now we find that there are many social problems in school settings too. Due to industrial revolution followed by urbanization and modernization processes and now globalization, we know that the interrelations are somewhat weakened, and we know that many relations are there, and the originally accepted social relations which were trying to help people are now no longer valid, and people no longer mutually discuss about what is affecting them as was happening in the conventional society. And this has led to the moral and social disintegration of people. And we find that the people are not able to communicate with others as well as themselves, also find solace and also seek solutions to their problems. And therefore, the social relationships have been drifting apart, causing problems. And such social drifting is also seen at home, which has made the individuals aloof, strained, and also forcing them into solitudeness. Such a sort of individual development now has become somewhat reduced, and we know that the educational guidance and counseling student services can help the students to actually become more social, more knowledgeable, and any stresses they may face and their efficiency, which has become somewhat less in view of the reduced help from the social setting as well as from the family setting. Now, this can be developed by having proper guidance and counseling services. Now, we know that the education is both a psychological program as well as a social integration process. That is, it helps the individual to develop himself and also become better acclimatized to the society in which he operates. Now, the students or any individual may have what we call four sort of factors which actually help the person to understand himself. That is, a person may have strengths, weaknesses, and a person may also have certain opportunities and also certain threats. This is known as SWOT. That is, strengths, weaknesses, O for opportunities, and T for threats. A person is able to operate based on these four factors. That is, a person's strengths help him to achieve something, weaknesses help him to what we call not gain or attain their goals, and there are opportunities present in the environment which the individual tries to achieve, but at the same time he may face certain personal risks or social threats. Now, taking into all these consideration, a person operates, and this is how he becomes successful. Now, the counselor has to identify the strengths and help the person to develop these strengths. At the same time, the counselor should help the students to understand their own weaknesses and their own limitations and provide guidance to develop their opportunities and better their skills, and also see that any threats or any problems that the students face may be solved by having a proper attitudes as well as understanding the environment. Now, the students have to be guided with regard to their development and also development of their cognitive abilities and also their linguistic development and also the curriculum and understanding the knowledge of what is to be understood or to be learned by them. Now, the students have to understand their weaknesses, strengths, understand their opportunities, and also find solutions to any problems or threats that they may face. Now, what are the general problems that are faced by the students in a school? Generally, we find that the students have academic problems, especially they may have certain problems dealing with their forgetfulness or lapses in memory. Sometimes they may have problems in understanding because of their weakness in concentration or attention. Sometimes they may dislike the studies and they want to go away from the study. This is because they are not able to understand what is happening in the classroom. Sometimes there may be sudden breakdowns in the learning due to change of teacher or due to change in the concept or higher level concept being actually taught in the classroom. Now here the students' problems have to be addressed. Sometimes the children are too lazy to attend the school. They feel they are irresponsible or they want to get away from the studies and they think of ways to escape from the school, and these problems should also be addressed because one cause may lead to another, and we find that there may be problems of low achievers are different from the problems of the high achievers. When the students overachieve also, it's a problem because they find the school setting not amicable for their own development and they find that there are certain problems. So also sometimes the students are backward in their studies. Sometimes they are neglectful or careless about their studies and they forget to do their assignments or homeworks. Sometimes the children have problems of having to deal with social beings or having fear of their particular circumstances like examinations or teachers, or they're afraid of their teachers who are somewhat more disciplined or they're more what you call disciplinary in nature. And all these problems of the children should be asked to be solved, and these problems of the children could be solved by providing proper guidance. And therefore, the teachers have to understand the education problems as well as the problems of the students and try to see that the methodologically they are provided proper help in both the development of cognitive abilities, and the teaching learning situation should be improved, as well as the strength between the teachers and pupils should be more. They should be able to communicate with each other, and the relation between the teacher and the pupil must be strengthened. At the same time, the teacher should build up the innate abilities of the children by providing the proper guidance and counseling. Sometimes it is not possible for the teacher to provide all the guidance and counseling in addition to the teaching that the one does. At the same time, here they should see that the major problems of the students that the teacher finds should be handed over to the counselor. So efficient academic guidance or counselor duties, the teaching and counseling duties should be separated more so that the counselor is able to identify and share with the teacher whatever the problems that the student faces. So the counselor should be more open, the student, so that the students are able to tell him their problems. Also, this sort of educational guidance and counseling will help to prevent the students from the negative influences that one may undergo, like drug or liquor addiction, or undertaking the sexual experiences or school living. So development as a whole process will become better provided one gives adequate counseling. So we cannot expect the teacher who may be involved in the teaching learning process, but the counselor along with the teacher may communicate with each other about the student problems and help the students overcome the problems. So guidance and counseling services at school level become very important. Here we'll stop and we'll understand more about this aspect tomorrow, and I'll give you an overall view about the educational psychology and what sort of topics are more important from the point of examinations. Thank you very much.